If you're a diehard Browns fan and love breaking down the game like we do, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you never miss a blitz. The Cleveland Browns entered the offseason with optimism, focusing on quarterback battles and refining offensive schemes, believing their offensive adjustments would carry the team. Yet, Tuesday's practice at the training facility served as an unwelcome reminder that football is never just about one side of the ball, and defensive health could very well dictate the Browns' season. Cornerback Martin Emerson Jr. had already left the secondary reeling with a non-contact Achilles injury earlier in camp, an unfortunate setback that tested the depth and resilience of Cleveland's defensive plans. The narrative surrounding the Browns' defense, often overshadowed by quarterback intrigue, came into sharper focus when veteran Denzel Ward suffered a shoulder injury during an intense one-on-one drill. Observers quickly realized that the combination of Emerson's absence and Ward's potential downtime could compromise the integrity of the defensive backfield, putting added pressure on Greg Newsome, Cameron Mitchell, and the coaching staff to maintain stability. This development sent ripples through the organization, illustrating how fragile success can be when key contributors are sidelined simultaneously. Ward's injury, reported by Mary Kay Cabot on Tuesday afternoon, added a layer of concern that fans, analysts, and teammates could not ignore. Browns CB Denzel Ward injured his right shoulder in a one-on-one drill today and went inside. Was in pain. No update from the team yet, Cabot tweeted, capturing the uncertainty surrounding one of the team's most vital defensive assets. The Browns had structured their secondary with Ward as the cornerstone, a leader both on and off the field, whose presence allowed defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz to implement aggressive, complex schemes that relied on lockdown coverage. Losing a player of Ward's caliber challenges not only the depth chart, but also the fundamental approach to defending the pass. The timing, during training camp when adjustments are still fluid, compounds the difficulty, forcing coaches to reconsider rotations, practice strategies, and how to develop less experienced players quickly enough to step into significant roles. For a team competing in the ruthless AFC North, such disruptions can reverberate across every game, magnifying the impact of a single injury on an entire season's trajectory. Denzel Ward's trajectory in Cleveland has been marked by consistency and excellence, attributes that made him indispensable to the Browns' defensive identity. A product of Ohio State, Ward recently completed his best professional season, starting all 16 games and earning his fourth Pro Bowl selection, demonstrating not just talent, but durability prior to this setback. Leading the NFL with 19 pass breakups and recording 2 interceptions, Ward has been a disruptive force in the secondary, frequently altering the momentum of games with plays that shifted outcomes. His role extends beyond statistics. He sets the tone for cornerback communication, aligns the secondary in coverage, and reads offenses in ways that younger players cannot yet replicate. The loss of such a player is more than a numerical gap. It is a qualitative deficit in leadership, anticipation, and experience. For Jim Schwartz, whose defensive philosophy revolves around exploiting weaknesses with coordinated pressure while relying on reliable coverage, the absence of Ward introduces vulnerabilities that opponents will aim to exploit immediately. Cleveland built its secondary with the Ward-Newsome pairing as the foundation, complemented by Cameron Mitchell in the nickel, forming what many analysts considered one of the most reliable backfields in recent Browns history. This trio was expected to provide a balance of experience, athleticism, and adaptability that allowed the defense to play aggressively, knowing that coverage responsibilities were in capable hands. Losing Ward, however, instantly transforms potential confidence into concern, as the lack of proven depth behind the starters becomes more pronounced. Greg Newsome, while talented and promising, cannot single-handedly carry the responsibilities that Ward has shouldered for years. Mitchell, similarly, thrives in specific sub-packages but has yet to demonstrate full-season resilience under heavy opponent targeting. The secondary stability, which is crucial to executing Schwartz's complex defensive schemes, now faces a test that could define the Browns' defensive identity long before the regular season begins. The ripple effects are undeniable, touching every positional group and game plan decision. Depth in the secondary has always been a point of emphasis for teams like Cleveland, particularly in a division as competitive and pass-heavy as the AFC North. While the Browns addressed several roster needs during the offseason, none of the new additions carry the track record necessary to seamlessly replace a Pro Bowl-caliber cornerback in extended action. Injuries to top-tier players are rarely isolated challenges. They force coordinators to adapt schemes, create reliance on younger players, and potentially change the tempo of play calling to avoid exposing vulnerabilities. Defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz's aggressive approach depends on confidence that the secondary can handle single coverage responsibilities. When that confidence erodes due to injury, the calculated risk of blitzes and stunts becomes a gamble rather than a strategy. Cleveland's defensive blueprint, previously a strength, now faces the possibility of instability, making each practice, each drill, and each adjustment essential in mitigating the impact of Ward's absence before the season even begins. The timing of Ward's shoulder injury could not be more precarious, as training camp represents a critical window for fine-tuning rotations, testing personnel, and embedding the communication necessary for seamless defensive execution. The coaching staff must weigh the risk of pushing a starter back onto the field too soon against the potential of developing backup talent rapidly enough to bridge the gap. This balancing act underscores a larger theme in professional football. The margin for error is minuscule, and the cost of mismanagement can be severe. For the Browns, whose aspirations include climbing the competitive AFC North ladder, maintaining defensive integrity is not optional. It is essential. Ward's injury, while not immediately season-ending, places heightened scrutiny on every player in the secondary, every practice session, and every schematic adjustment. The chain reaction set off by a single non-contact shoulder injury highlights the precarious nature of football planning, where even the best-laid strategies can be disrupted in an instant. Beyond the technical and strategic implications, the psychological impact of losing a cornerstone player cannot be understated. Teammates look to veterans like Ward for stability, direction, and reassurance, particularly in high-pressure scenarios. The mental challenge of replacing a player with his combination of skill and leadership can affect communication, trust, and overall cohesion on the field. For younger players stepping into a starting role, the learning curve is steep, with the added pressure of performing at a level that maintains the unit's reputation. The coaching staff, meanwhile, must balance encouragement with accountability, ensuring that substitutes understand their responsibilities while protecting them from exposure that could have long-term consequences. Football, as much as it is about physical ability, is about preparation, decision-making, and execution, all of which are jeopardized when a key contributor is sidelined unexpectedly during the formative weeks of camp. The Browns' defensive scheme, rooted in pressure, disguise, and calculated risk, relies on the assumption that the secondary can handle one-on-one matchups and zone responsibilities effectively. Denzel Ward's presence allows Jim Schwartz to trust that cornerback assignments will hold up against the league's most dynamic passing attacks, freeing linebackers and safeties to focus on blitz packages and gap control. With Ward injured, the margin for error shrinks, forcing a more conservative approach that could hinder the defense's ability to dictate the pace of games. Opposing quarterbacks, aware of the weakened perimeter, may attack with greater frequency, putting additional stress on a front seven that is not invincible. In short, the cascading effects of a single shoulder injury threaten not just one player, but the philosophy and effectiveness of the entire defensive framework, a reality that Cleveland must confront immediately. While injuries are an unavoidable reality in football, the strategic and psychological timing of Ward's setback compounds its significance. The Browns' offense may be strong and evolving, but in a division where defensive stops often define outcomes, losing a cornerstone defensive player at the start of camp poses serious challenges. The combination of Emerson's prior Achilles injury and Ward's sudden shoulder issue presents a dual vulnerability, raising questions about how backups, rotations, and schemes can absorb the impact. Coaches must now prepare contingencies, develop communication protocols, and integrate new talent rapidly, all while maintaining confidence in the starting lineup's ability to return to health. Cleveland's ability to navigate these early obstacles may define whether they can compete at a championship level or face an uphill battle in a season of uncertainty. The narrative surrounding the Browns' defense is now dominated by urgency, adaptation, and the need for resilience. Ward's injury highlights the importance of depth, the fragility of reliance on star players, and the cascading challenges that injuries introduce in modern football. The team's front office, coaching staff, and players must collaborate to minimize disruption, maintain competitive readiness, and ensure that defensive identity is preserved. How quickly and effectively Cleveland adjusts will likely determine whether the Browns can withstand the inevitable rigors of the AFC North. The pressure is intensified by the expectations surrounding the team's quarterback and offensive development, meaning that any defensive struggle could overshadow offensive progress. Ward's situation is emblematic of the high stakes of football, where preparation meets uncertainty, and a single injury can test the resilience of an entire organization before the season even kicks off. Cleveland's fans, analysts, and media are now left to grapple with questions that extend beyond mere statistics or roster moves, focusing instead on the intangible elements of leadership, trust, and in-game adaptability. Denzel Ward is not simply a cornerback. He is a symbol of defensive reliability and a player whose presence influences the performance of those around him. His potential absence forces the Browns to reconsider personnel deployment, strategy, and risk management at every level, from practice sessions to preseason matchups. The urgency to adapt creates both challenges and opportunities, as backups must seize their moment to prove capability while veterans provide guidance under heightened scrutiny. Ultimately, the unfolding situation serves as a reminder that football is a game of preparation, resilience, and adaptability, and the Browns' response to Ward's injury will define not only the early trajectory of their season, but also the broader perception of their organizational strength in the face of adversity. Enjoying the content so far? Smash that like button and drop your take in the comments. We want to hear what you think about the Browns this season. The Cleveland Browns woke up this week to the kind of nightmare that can shake an entire organization from the top down, because two of their most important starters, Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, have been suspended in the exact same week after failing league-mandated doping tests. And the whispers coming out of Berea suggest this isn't just an isolated incident, but the start of a much bigger storm about to crash down on the franchise. Fans were just beginning to believe the Browns had finally put years of disappointment behind them, believing in a new core of young offensive leaders who could inject life into a roster often criticized for inconsistency. Yet in one shocking turn of events, both quarterbacks have been pulled off the field indefinitely. Insiders claim the front office is scrambling to control the narrative, but every hour that passes only makes the scandal grow louder. If you step back and think about it, the timing of this scandal couldn't be worse, because preseason chemistry and locker room unity were supposed to be the talking points, not sudden absences that rip holes into the offensive strategy. Dillon Gabriel, the quick-release passer who had been impressing in early scrimmages, was being groomed as a dynamic play caller capable of stretching defenses and making the Browns' offense less predictable, while Shedeur Sanders, carrying the weight of his famous last name and his growing reputation as a poised playmaker, was building momentum with receivers hungry to prove themselves. To lose both in the same week creates an atmosphere of confusion, resentment, and fear. Reporters have already spotted players leaving practice with tense expressions, avoiding microphones, and shaking their heads. You can almost sense that nobody knows who to trust inside the facility, and every rumor fuels speculation that the locker room could fracture. The substance itself has not yet been disclosed publicly, but league sources suggest it was flagged under the performance enhancement category, which always raises eyebrows because it casts doubt on how much of a player's rise was due to talent and how much was fueled by something artificial. When one player tests positive, fans often chalk it up to a mistake, a contaminated supplement, or an unfortunate oversight. But when two starters test positive in the very same week, both playing the most scrutinized position in the game, suspicion grows that something deeper may be going on. Did both men share training regimens, nutritionists, or strength coaches? Was there a lapse in oversight by the Browns organization itself? Or is this purely coincidental bad luck? The league has been tight-lipped, but every beat reporter in Cleveland is digging relentlessly, knowing this could become one of the biggest scandals in recent NFL memory. What makes the situation particularly combustible is how the suspensions impact not only the immediate roster, but the credibility of the coaching staff and front office. The Browns invested time, money, and marketing energy in positioning Gabriel and Sanders as faces of the franchise, using them as pillars in season ticket campaigns, merchandise pushes, and social media engagement. Fans bought in, creating a wave of optimism rarely seen in Cleveland sports circles, only to feel betrayed by headlines screaming about doping violations. Some analysts say the coaching staff should have had tighter control over what players were consuming, while others argue it's impossible to monitor every supplement in a league where athletes often operate with private trainers and nutritionists. Regardless, the blame game is starting, and insiders whisper that finger-pointing has already erupted behind closed doors, which is the last thing any franchise needs when trying to build trust. And if you think this story is confined to Cleveland, think again, because the national media has seized on it with relentless energy, broadcasting every detail across highlight shows, talk radio segments, and digital feeds. ESPN, Fox Sports, and every football podcast you can imagine are circling like sharks smelling blood, spinning narratives about whether this is simply an unfortunate coincidence or a sign of systemic negligence within the Browns culture. Rival fanbases are mocking Cleveland relentlessly, while diehards are lashing out defensively online, creating a digital battleground where every detail gets dissected. The NFL itself, notoriously sensitive to optics, is reportedly considering additional audits of the Browns' training practices, which could lead to heavy sanctions if negligence is proven. For a team already under immense pressure to deliver results, the weight of public humiliation adds another layer of chaos to an already messy situation. Meanwhile, inside the locker room, whispers suggest players are divided. Some teammates are rallying behind Gabriel and Sanders, insisting they were victims of bad supplements or simply unlucky, while others feel betrayed, angry that months of preparation may now be wasted because of avoidable mistakes. Trust between players is fragile in any professional environment, but when you're suddenly left wondering whether your leaders cut corners, the ripple effects can be devastating. Younger players may question whether the team culture is really what they signed up for, while veterans may quietly begin doubting the leadership's ability to steer the ship. Coaches are trying to enforce a next man up mentality, urging backups to seize the opportunity, but privately, sources say, even the staff is shell-shocked. They know the loss of two high-profile quarterbacks in 1 week is not something you can patch with motivational speeches alone. The fanbase reaction has been just as explosive, with social media timelines turning into a war zone of frustration, disbelief, and conspiracy theories. Some believe the league is targeting Cleveland unfairly, punishing the Browns more harshly because of their history as a so-called cursed franchise, while others are calling out the players themselves, demanding accountability and labeling them selfish for jeopardizing a season that felt so promising. Season ticket holders have voiced anger over paying premium prices to watch a team stripped of its most marketable stars, while merchandise sales, which had spiked following the introduction of new jerseys, are reportedly slowing. The Browns' community relations department has been scrambling, trying to spin the situation into a narrative of resilience and redemption, but in truth, the damage may already be irreversible in the eyes of many. Once trust is broken, it rarely returns quickly in professional sports. From a football perspective, the loss of Gabriel and Sanders is catastrophic for scheme development. Offensive coordinators have been tailoring plays around their skill sets, crafting a versatile system that combined Gabriel's quick reads with Sanders' ability to extend plays and improvise. Now, with both men sidelined, the Browns must scramble to elevate backups who were never expected to carry such weight so early. Practice reps are being split in unusual ways, and the offensive rhythm is disjointed. Reporters at practice have described an atmosphere that feels more like survival mode than preparation for competition, with coaches barking louder than usual and mistakes piling up. It's one thing to lose a single quarterback to injury or suspension, but losing two in one swoop creates a sense of organizational paralysis. The rest of the league is already salivating, sensing weakness in a team that was supposed to rise. Speculation about the future is now unavoidable, because depending on how long these suspensions last, the Browns may have to make difficult decisions about whether Gabriel and Sanders remain central to the franchise. Some league insiders believe the team could explore trade scenarios once the dust settles, while others argue the players may fight aggressively to clear their names and return as soon as possible. Either way, the uncertainty undermines the Browns' long-term vision, forcing them into crisis management mode rather than steady building. Coaches will inevitably face questions about whether the organization invested too much faith in players without thoroughly vetting their backgrounds and habits. The narrative of Cleveland as a team cursed by bad luck is being reinforced yet again, but this time, many feel it is less about fate and more about self-inflicted wounds. That perception alone could alter the franchise's reputation for years. What happens next will determine whether this scandal becomes just a painful chapter or a defining downfall. If the Browns can somehow hold together, rally around backups, and weather the storm until Gabriel and Sanders return, they might spin the story into one of resilience and grit. But if the season collapses under the weight of distraction, ridicule, and poor performance, the legacy of this scandal will live on as proof that Cleveland once again squandered potential when it mattered most. For now, the only certainty is that every move will be under the microscope, every decision second-guessed, and every game broadcast framed by the absence of two quarterbacks who should have been the future. The NFL world thrives on drama, and right now, the Browns are providing it in ways that nobody in Cleveland ever wanted. The fallout has only just begun, and the whispers keep getting louder. Thanks for riding with us on another Browns Blitz. If you liked the video, share it with a fellow fan, hit subscribe, and ring that bell so you're always part of the Dawg Pound conversation. Go Browns!